Good evening, everyone, and a very warm lighthouse welcome to this evening's event, the launch of The Coward by Jarred McGinnis. I wish I could be waving its shit-hot cover in front of you, but I can't because I have already passed on the book to my mother and she has buggered off to the beach to read it. It is an incredible book. This is the kind of novel you will all be throwing at people. So I know many of you have already ordered a copy, but you can get another one so that you don't end up like me without your very own copy. Tonight's host is another fan of this very brilliant book. So to welcome you all and to take you through the evening, I have A.L.Kennedy, who I expect you all at home to very awkwardly and weirdly clap and whoop and embarrass yourself as we welcome her onto the screen. Thank you for joining us. And here she is.
Hey, well, hello to, I think most of Jarred's family, which is great. Hello, people in Edinburgh. God, I missed you. Hello from, hello, Leith. Hello, New Haven. Very pleased to see everybody here. And just delighted to be doing this. I mean, really, really delighted to be doing this. It's a very long time since I've sat up in bed and just read a book that I got sent as will you read this book? And I didn't really clock that it was by Jarred, who I already knew. It was just, I've got sent a book to read by Canongate, and they do good books, so I'll start reading this book at 10:30 at night, and I think I finished it at 4:30 in the morning. And I think I probably then emailed Canongate and emailed Jarred, because it's just this delightful, howling, crazy, super specific, perfect detail, wonderful flow of consciousness, just magnificent. I want to swear so much because when I love things, it makes me swear. It's a very good effing book, and I can wave it. I'm about to give this to my mother. I don't know what that says about the book, that we want to give shocking, blasphemous, magnificent, darkly humorous books to our mothers. I think because we both got nice mothers. So yeah, the first long project from Jarred. Damn you, knocking it out of the park from a standing start. But I know Jarred, as I say, because of a thing called the special relationship, where somebody was looking at literary events and looking at the relationship between writing and other forms and the writer and the audience, and narration as actual narration and voice as actual voice, and really looking at a thing and saying, well, this isn't all that interesting, so how do we fix it? How do we make it amazing? And it would always be, hey, you'll be in a tub of people dressed as John Wayne Gacy, and cucumbers will be thrown at your head, and we need 6 sonnets to fit into that scenario. Or, something equally magnificent. It would always sound as if you might die. And it would always be an utterly unrepeatable thing. And I'm mentioning this because that spirit is in this. Somebody has genuinely thought about, how does a writer talk to a reader and tell a pressingly urgent and funny and heartbreaking story to that reader in a way that means they don't go to sleep, which is just glorious. So we might sort of start the questions in that area, but first I just really want you to read to the audience, just in case they haven't already started.
All right. Well, I'll pick a bit. So there's 2 threads in the book, and I was going to pick, and again, it's a lot of light and dark, and often light and dark are adjacent. And so I'm gonna pick a scene from near the beginning, but in the past. So Jarred, the character, comes back to live with his father, who he hasn't seen in 10 years. And he's living in his childhood home, and this is kind of forcing him to evaluate the accident that's put him in a wheelchair, but also what led to it. And so this is from the past. On the day of Mom's funeral, the house was full of family and coworkers. Everyone was bearing somber expressions in casserole dishes. To this day, lasagna means death to me. I had just escaped the clutches of an aunt who was battling to make one of Dad's ties fit me. Her last attempt was a knot the size of my fist, which was good enough to satisfy her. I said thanks and fled. I found Dad in there, now his bedroom. I sat beside him. We stared at the wall for answers. I'm not going to the funeral, I announced. And Jarred right now is about 10 years old, 11 years old. No? Why not? I shrugged and took Mom's pillow from the bed and buried my head into it for the scent of her. We sat together, me and Dad, and stared at the wall. Still, it gave nothing away. I'm definitely not going to the funeral. I stood up and left. In the kitchen, I took a sandwich from the pile and a can of Coke from the counter. A woman who I didn't know suggested there was cold ones in the fridge. I shook my head, put the edge of Mom's pillow in my teeth, and went outside. The neighbor across the street always left their garage door ajar to let their cats go in and out, and I set my sandwich, Coke, and pillow inside, then squeezed through. A narrow space meandered between the stacks of boxes and junk. The workbench was a pile of rusting tools, and I compared it to Dad's orderly system of having a place outlined on the wall for every screwdriver and wrench. I thought someone should tell the neighbor about his system. I moved between the stacks of boxes, opening them to examine the contents, photos and papers, canned foods, newspaper-wrapped knickknacks, and ancient appliances. A marquee that advertised pizza leaned against the back of a gun cabinet storing golf clubs, which created a space big enough for me to lie down. I moved boxes to seal one side, and I had my fortress. Shortly after, the calling of my name stopped, and the cars drove away. I left her pillow in my fortress and shoved the empty can into a box of junk. Our house was left unlocked, but it was empty. The dining room table was full of Tupperware and Pyrex domed with food. I pressed my finger into saran-wrapped broccoli cheese casserole and smushed a hole into it. I ate a cookie and smushed more holes. I ate some chips from a bowl and made more holes until some well-wisher's comfort food looked like a pegboard. I went into Mom's closet, stumbled on the piled shoes, and was enveloped by her hanging clothes. The hangers clattered, and her long dresses fell to the ground as I tripped and tangled myself into them. In her bathroom, I uncapped and unscrewed and sniffed the menagerie of bottles and tubes that mothers need. I twisted a pink bullet of lipstick up and down. I spread it on my lips and looked at myself in the mirror. I put 2 sharp streaks of war paint on my cheeks, one down the center of my nose and forehead. I nibbled and chewed the waxy tip before returning it to the basket. I crawled under her side of the bed. Lying on my back, I imagined her sleeping above me. I was awoken by Dad pulling me out by the ankle. He wiped away the lipstick on my cheek and sniffed his fingers. Your brother's gonna sleep in your room and drive back tomorrow, okay? You can have the couch or you can sleep in here with me. In here. Hey, we gave Mom a fighting chance. You took good care of her. She's gone now. We got to figure out how to deal with it. But she died knowing how much we loved her. That's more than a lot of people get. I nodded, but I didn't understand. He continued. Think of all those extra days we had lying beside her, holding her hand. Remember? You should know how special it is. You hear me? I mean it. I waited for him to respond. How about you go clean your face off, or unless you got a date or something. I'll stop there.
Thanks. Thanks very much. And that, if I can just jump in, and that really, it's a beautiful piece to pick. I mean, you've got a character who's got your name, which we'll come to how that works and what relationship that gives you with the text. But that, it refers to his parents' marriage. You've got this dying mother drinking next to the father drinking, and this kind of strange, magnificent, awful marriage. And Jarred sees that, and then he has these kind of blighted relationships with women. I mean, how were you thinking about that as a whole? Were you thinking about that as an expression? He's an addict. He's even from that short piece, you've got this uncanny instinct. in showing somebody's drive to self-destruction and how it's so kind of absolutely dead set north. How are you thinking about his kind of relationships that way?
I mean, so the heart line through it is the character of Jack and Jarred, the father and the son, and that was the heart line at all times. And it was really about that relationship between those two. And it was also about thinking about certainly about women and how men perceive women, how men are told to perceive women, especially with him losing his mom so early. That clearly kind of creates, and then also seeing the relationship between the father and the wife is actually this kind of like, to me, it was this kind of like bizarre, because they were kind of very active alcoholics, but they were, in terms, they were very kind of functional. And actually they had this kind of almost dream. It was a very nice little system they had there, very contained little world. They could drink and they could love. And that messes Jarred up. And that comes from the big thing that I was thinking about in terms of theme about the status quo. And to me, it was like all the narratives about disability and addiction were focused on the boring bits. Addiction is boring. It's tedious. It's not interesting. And if you've ever had an addict in your life, you know that. And, disability is the same thing. The whole montage of kind of like building your strength up is boring. Like the whole triumph over adversity. And there's a whole line about like, constantly trying to get this guy to do something physical. And he was like, I was lazy when I was walking around. Why would I use this excuse not to be lazy now? And I wanted to show that. And so I showed that with addiction, is that the family is fine until actually the dad quits drinking. And that when that status quo breaks, neither of them know how to navigate each other emotionally, because now they have to feel. Like that's the problem.
There's no anesthetic. Yeah.
There's no aesthetic anymore. So they have to deal with the mom's death now, and it's too late. There's been 6 years of damage, and that's when it really gets bad for the family, for the father and son's relationship. And the same with Jarred in the present, getting in the wheelchair. Like his life was not going well. And that accident was his, in kind of terms of addiction, was his rock bottom. And here was the opportunity to fix that. And whether he takes that or not is the story. And that to me is what it was doing. And he's looking back at his relationships with his father, with his friends, the choices he made, and the women in his life. And he's not sure if he's worth redemption. And he has an opportunity now to just quit. And that's definitely what addiction, and that's definitely what disability can give you, especially in the States, because they give you huge bottles of Vicodin and Percocet. As long as you're paying your bills, they'll keep giving you those pills. So
yeah. So if we look at this, I mean, you've got a very strange, sad story with the mother. In a way, his parents are in love with the substance, and he's kind of floating about being this semi-feral boy who grows up to a semi-feral, literally to the point where he's like the feral cat, that he sleeps in the garage the same way that the cat would. There's this awful incident where he's in love with somebody, and then there's an accident that hurts him terribly, kills her, and then no anesthetic and reality. So it's very dark. I cannot emphasize enough how screamingly funny it is, as very dark things are. But were you sitting there, or did anybody at any point say, look, but we need the montage of you between the bars doing physio, and we need you standing up in an AA meeting tearfully saying, my name is Jarred and I'm an alcoholic, and the room going, you said it, as if that would not be a surprise in a AA meeting. Did anybody sort of steer you and say, we don't know who's going to be able to stand this, because it's a beautifully real book, but some people have a problem with that?
Yeah, because and it was, because there was another iteration of that, and there was kind of, the publishers were interested, and they were talking about, and I just saw the way they were pushing me, and I was like, I just don't think I can make that book. I know what you're saying, and I get it, and I understand that's a story, but that's not the story I want to tell. And I'm pretty contrarian, and also I'm a bit of a goofball. I don't realize like I can throw opportunities away, but I think it was right, is because this book was so personal. It had to be absolutely right. And I'm very accommodating. I'm American, so I have that condition of I want everybody to like me. And so like I really tried to do what they're after. And I just couldn't do it. And at a certain point I was like, I can't do it. And I put the book, I told people I put the book behind the shed and shot it. That's what I did. And it was a couple years later that I picked it up, and I was like, I had my first daughter, and I was like, I just didn't have much energy to do anything new. So I was like, well, I'll look at this thing. I was like, damn it. Like, no, there's something here. And that really started the iteration that you saw, that there's some scenes that I kept, but like the heart and the drive, and certainly the kind of blistering, is all there. And that, again, it was that decision to no longer ignore that a part of Jarred is me. And, that was because initially I tried to avoid any that, because I've been in like workshops where people are always constantly writing a simulacrum of them, and that's dangerous because you want you to win. So like, and it's just like, you gotta give this person a bit of a hard time. And I've been in workshops where I'm leading workshops, and it's hard to say like, listen, you're not interesting. You gotta cut this bit. Like, this character is the cool bit. Like, go with this one and make this one. I know it's you, and we're all gonna pretend it's not you, but like, and I was avoiding that. But when I unlocked that, and I said, you know what, I got to admit to something here, and that unlocked it. And it was a real incredible. I was surprised by the catharsis. I really put a lot in there, and I was like, man, I was angry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not a kind of incoherent, undigested fury. It's just, here's the way this was or would be or could be, or a way that I can, it's very articulate while being very true. I mean, I kept thinking about this book, it's the same name and it has a relationship to your life, but for a book that's called The Coward, there's this enormous commitment, and there's enormous, I'm just going to jump off this cliff because this is necessary. There's this huge desire to find, because fiction is fiction, whatever kind of fiction, but you've found the true lie. You found the true fiction. And I think that's why, it makes it genuinely heartbreaking. It makes him genuinely heartbreaking, I think.
And that's the bit that took so much work of getting it right, and just kind of pulling back and making sure he didn't win all the fights. And the title, like, that was something that was really discussed over and over again. It had multiple titles, and it really took actually the publisher at Canongate to kind of make a call and be like, what do you think about the title? I was like, well, I got this other title, The Coward, but like, everyone seems really nervous about it. And and somebody described it as rebarbative, and I had to go look up rebarbative, and I was like, yeah, that's what I want. That's the thing. That's it. That's right. Yeah. Rebarbative. That's good. I like that. That's a new word. I'm going to use that.
It's perfect. It kind of tastes of it. Yeah.
Well, and to me, it was like, the guys I'm swinging at are guys like Dostoevsky. I'm an idiot. Like, and like the Dostoevsky idiot, he's an idiot because he actually believes in being a good Christian. And like, these men are, consider themselves cowards, but actually like the emotional bravery. And so it's the ironic title, and it's what these guys do and what they need to do to rectify this relationship. It takes incredible courage, and it's painful. It's so much easier to just drink yourself away or just give up and keep those boundaries. I mean, that's where they came from, and I'm so glad that they trusted it enough to like, okay, we're gonna do it. So
and I think the truth allows you to get it, just to make something work that could feel horribly fake, because on the one hand, like father like son, these are both funny guys. and they wisecrack back and forth, and they wisecrack back and forth for similar reasons of avoidance and conflict and just liking it and just what the hell and who the hell are you. But the level of raw emotional energy stops it being, you know, not quite an episode of Frasier, but, you know, it's not just funny guys saying funny stuff.
Yeah. Again, that was another like balance, and it was like such a fret of mine because I'm on that kind of just that line of melodrama, and it's just like it's so easy to tip over, and there'll be some people who don't think I get it right, but it was something I really did think about, and it was something I really tried to navigate. And actually, when I was going through the editorial process, you know, I really kind of pulled back and kind of, because it was like, for me, it was just the lack of confidence of being like, this is my first novel. I was really kind of laying it on thick, and it took an editor, you know, Ella, who's just the best like author whisperer, to kind of just in her subtle way suggest that I look at this little bit here and this little bit here. And she knew me and knew that I'd be like, yeah, I need to pull this. I need to dial back. I need to bring it because I've done the work. And that's the biggest thing for me as a writer and for the writing, is that does the work do the work? That's why we call it a work, because it's got a job to do. There's a vision, an artistic vision. And she let me figure out that I had done it and trust myself as a writer. And that's tough because you never know. It's ex nihilo. This is art. To be an artist is to just be a constant failure. And it's not, you know, you're pulling things from the potential and just sticking it down into the actuality. And that will always be a failure. And you got to love that. You got to be a little bit sick.
Because you know, just you will be reading yourself again the second bit in a minute. But if this is almost picking a piece at random. I mean, I can totally believe that would be a problem because you just nail it. You just get, there's a musicality that's like a musicality of speech, but a musicality of humor, because it has to go yum dum dum da da or it won't work. Yeah. And you just pick the right description. So I could see that, you know, if you were feeling anxious, you could destabilize something that's very, very stable. But, you know, there's this little description here. Maybe it was like in the movies, somewhere in Wisconsin, his mother dropped her teacup, it shattered, and as she sopped up the liquid with a Green Bay Packers kitchen towel, she knew her son, who was such a live little boy, always up to no good, who used to love baseball, was dead. He would never phone her again on Christmas like he did a few years back, crying apologies. Yeah, it's a movie pastiche, but then you put in the Green Bay Packers kitchen towel, you warlock. And then it's not just who used to love baseball, this person is human, dead. There are comments coming up here going, oofed. I think that's the response. That is the correct response to that paragraph, oofed. But then he would never phone her again on Christmas. And you just have to put in, like he did a few years back, crying apologies. And it's just, okay, so that's the whole of the history of them then I don't know, 150 words. You swine, you monster. How? But I can see that sort of style of editing would be there. I mean, did you when you were writing? I mean, obviously there are these dreadful, monstrous editors who are trying to reform you for the mythical market. The same people who call some of Shakespeare's plays problem plays because they're funny and sad. It's like, have you seen reality lately? I mean, it's a problem, but we all have to live here. I'm so sorry that they nearly killed a beautiful, beautiful book. But was there in your head an idea of, I'm saying this to somebody who'll get it, or did you have any confidence that somebody out there would get it? I mean, was that the thing that was helping you to be, no, I'm going to do it my way or the highway?
I mean, I did have a mission statement in that I wanted somebody who wasn't disabled to go through a journey. I wanted them to find out what happened to Jarred McGinnis, because you get, when you're disabled, when you have a physical disability like a physical marker of your disability, a wheelchair like me, you just get people, and it's in the book, like people just randomly, and some of the stuff that actually happened, people are like, nobody's gonna believe that, so I had to pull it out. But so I had to tone it down, like like people just trying to faith heal you, like on a bus, like. So I had a great scene, but they're like, this is a bit much. It's like, oh, that was a good one, like, because he pretends to get up and then falls on his face. So like, but like, yeah, to me, it was like, how do I communicate that? And so there's a little subtle thing of when I use the you is when I'm trying to inculcate the reader and get them in. And I do that very lightly because second person is a bit finger jabby. But those little light brushes, and I was really light about this. I just wanted to kind of go like, hey, pay attention here. This is what it's actually like. You're going to read other books that do the Rocky montage. This one isn't it. This is what it's actually like. This is what you have to do when you wake up and you've now got, a broken spine. You got to figure that out. And so there was, but again, I didn't want it to be propaganda, and I didn't want Jarred to be the hero. I wanted him to be human, and we're messes, and I was very comfortable with that. I wanted that, and that was, that came. I didn't want him to be this kind of, that trope of the kind of sacred disability, where like, this is the person who gives advice to the main able-bodied main character. And this guy is just kind of just leaving devastation left and right amongst the able-bodied.
I may be in a wheelchair, but I can still cause complete chaos.
Exactly. And kind of aware that the disability provides you some invisibility, and that's kind of great if you like to shoplift. So
this is being recorded, but that bit will be removed,
which is true. It's amazing.
So I started life with disability writing groups. I didn't write with anybody normal for like 15 years, and it's like, it was like coming home in that sense. It's like, I know these people, and that it's sort of very comforting. It's not, I'm going to make you me. It's not, we're going to stand far away and stare, and this is an H documentary of disability, but that it's like this kind of just an arm around the shoulder, while, I mean, your descriptions are absolutely unsparing of that waking up and things not working. And, oh, by the way, this could happen. And then you just die. And, oh, this is painful. And, oh, my God, this is still happening. And really does kind of bring a sweat out in your top lip when you correctly, as you say, it earns some like 1% of understanding of what that would be like.
Yeah. And that's it. You have to you have to understand that you do have to heighten it. And it was thinking about that as like, how do I kind of communicate? And you do have to make it a bit heightened and lurid, but I always knew that, like, I knew what I was doing. And then I knew that I was going to bring it a little quieter later. And just so like, it wasn't just like a blast of misery. And that wasn't interesting either. I mean, and that was something I worked at, and I hope that I got it right. And that was something that I bought me. What I bought myself was with having the two narratives and the arcs doing very different things. And I was able to kind of navigate. It gave me a degree of articulation that wouldn't have worked if I did a straight story or I didn't go into the past. And that became very useful. Yeah.
Sure. Which we will get to after you've read another bit, so that I would say not only hungry but thirsty in all of the senses readers will get to hear more of you.
So I'm gonna do a bit in the present and it'll be a little lighter. I do want to just put my wife is horrified that I'm going to read this section. So I just think she would want everyone to know. But I wanted to get a bit of lightness, but it's about as light as it gets. So, this is near the beginning. Jarred and Jack are kind of starting to get out and take walks, and they're just, and it's really a kind of mechanism of Jack to try to help save Jarred. Jarred is aware of that, but he also knows he wants to get out of the house. So Jack was in the living room, leaning back in his recliner with the leg rest popped up. I formulated the question in my head, a simple sentence. Jack, what's up with the flower in my room? Jack previously had left an orchid in his room without saying anything about it. But no, I wasted so many chances to talk to Jack. In his hands, in his lap, he held a pamphlet, Spinal Cord Injury Guide to Functional Recovery. His eyes were closed. I moved closer to Jack and picked at the cracked armrest with clouds of stuffing bursting out. I remembered when I stood over him as he slept in this chair, in this house, with a brick in my hand, and my arms trembling with hate. As I watched him sleep now, it was sadness I felt, thick, cloying, and constant. The coffee table, nicked and gouged, was the same one from my childhood. The couch, the TV, the same. So much of the house hadn't changed, like Jack had only aged. Jesus, Jack started. What the hell are you doing creeping up on me? He slid the pamphlet in his back pocket. This house hasn't changed in years, because it didn't need to. He closed his eyes again. Don't you ever get bored of looking at the same four walls? What kind of moron pays attention to walls? He said, his eyes still closed. I wheeled over to the few hung photos and drew smiley faces in the dust on the people in the pictures. Jack and Mom on their wedding day, my older brother graduating from high school, my older brother graduating from college, a picture of me on one knee in a Little League uniform. But no picture of all four of us together. That would have been an impossibility. It's boring around here. Only stupid people, eyes still closed, get bored. I finished the sentence. All right. His eyes popped open. His hand dropped to the recliner's lever, and the footrest folded back in with a sproing and a clunk. Since I'm not getting my nap, you're going for a walk with me. I can't. Come on. You've been hiding out in your room too long. Sleeping all the time is not good for you. You should be cutting down on the goofy pills. Start building up your strength. My back hurts. I'm awake, and you got no one to blame but yourself, Jack said. We'll aim for the donut shop, make it as far as we can. 2 streets down from our house, Jack hesitated. Too late. Brace yourself. She must have been waiting behind her curtains for us. What? I said. It's the neighborhood busybody. She thinks that goddamn dog is the Messiah. Coming down her driveway was an old woman with a blue rinse puff of perm perched upon a bag of leathered skin. A small yellow dog looked at us with disappointment from the cradle of her arms. Hello, Jack. Is this your son? She asked. Yeah, this is my youngest, Jarred. Jarred, would you like to meet Lulu? The dog was in my lap before I could respond. Lulu is a Cocker Spaniel mix and a certified therapy dog. The dog stared gormlessly between the woman and me. Lulu is the world's bestest, most devoted therapy dog, she said to the dog. Its stillness, its warm weight was pleasant. Its black marble eyes shone. The dog gave a few timid licks to the air between us. Softening my look, I patted it on the head. The golden fur was soft. The tail picked up speed, swishing across my jeans. Hello, Lulu, I said. Lulu's owner beamed at Jack, who looked down the road. Lulu, you're a little fur baby, aren't you? I said. Jack furrowed his brow, confused. I petted the dog. The tail was a lie detector needle going nuts. Lulu, should we show the nice lady where the bad man touched us? Yes, I think we should. I lifted the animal. He covered my face in doggy kisses. I cradled him in my arm, his belly up. The dog licked my neck. Let's see. First, he took me out for ice cream, and then he took me to his naked puzzle basement. I scratched and rubbed the dog's belly. He told me to take my shirt off, and he touched me here and here, and I pointed to the dog's nipples. I don't remember there being so many, but it was definitely these two, I continued. Then the bad man touched me here, and I twanged the carrot top tuft of hair on the dog's penis. Lulu's tail and tongue were full tilt. The owner squealed in horror and rushed forward. Jack stifled a laugh. The owner and I tussled for the animal, who was loving the attention. Wait, that's not everywhere, I shouted as the lady retreated back up her driveway. Lulu, call me. Can't wait to see her community newsletter item about that one, Jack said. We continued a few more streets before the pain became too much and Jack pushed me home. When we got home, I don't remember if we bullshitted about football and weather. I hope we did.
Yeah. Family friendly. See, everybody loves dogs and kids and fathers and sons doing things together. What would be wrong?
I just thought it would be fair of me to let everyone know what they were getting into.
It's just the thing. I don't remember there being so many nipples, but it's just beautiful. I think it's only in German they have this thing of pouring water on a drowning man. That it's like you don't let up. You wait until they're actually whimpering, and then you stop being funny at them. But again, that lovely mix of anger and why have you thrown a dog at me just because I'm sitting down and have wheels, which is just magnificent. Now, to get back to this structure, I mean, what part of this was instinct? What part of this was planning? How do they intersect? You've got this present day, pretty much chronological, linear kind of cinematic thing of guy ends up having to be home, very strange relationship with home, where he can't go but he can't stay, strange relationship, years apart from his father, but accident happens, has to be at home. It's kind of stuck there for quite a while. And there are these, for me, perfectly articulated journeys that he goes back and other kind of threads of the past that loop round, and then you get a different loop of a different thread, and then you come back, which I'm making it sound very complicated, but it feels really easy, which leads me to believe that it was very hard to arrange. It just feels that you're going where his head goes. I mean, how did that develop?
Yeah, so definitely not. It definitely wasn't instinct, and it definitely wasn't kind of like Athena. Definitely, it was definitely like
good. I hope you suffered.
Definitely, yeah, it definitely came from it. Yeah, and I mean, it was just once. I mean, I think because I wrote a lot of, I kind of cut my teeth, and when I kind of learned my trade, as it were, in the short form, I was always a devotee of the short form, and I mean that's where I kind of discovered your writing. And that to me was good training. And I think so when I get the scene, it's good. I get it, and I can nail the scene, and I can get it, and it's about trimming on the sides and all that. And so I had a lot of scenes that just didn't do any work, but they were vivid, and that's hard because you're like, oh, that's a really good scene, but it's like it's not doing anything for the larger scheme. And it just took a lot of edits and a lot of cutting and a lot of just arranging. And I will never use Word again because, God, like when you have to move things in Word, like it's just disgusting. Like and like and it was a lot of it was kind of like on the floor, positioning things, thinking about what I was doing there, and and I have a lot of things that you don't need to read it to see it, but there's a reason every time I go into the past, multiple reasons. And that's something you get from a short story, right? Is that sentence has to do multiple jobs because you do not have time to make errors, and you don't have time to flap about. You got to get in there and grab this person and make them pay attention to your world. And so that to do that and to make sure, and so just I'm going into the past because I've done a tone here, but also it's these things in the past are because something happened in the present and making him think about it. The past for me in my head is him thinking about this. It's not happening. It's him recalling it. And so there are connections through that. But if a reader gets that, I mean, bonus points to me. But like my vision is that I write something that somebody wants to read once. Like that was my goal, is like, and then all this kind of airy-fairy kind of like heightened literary stuff that I love. If they come and get that later, that's great. That's really good. But like, I mean, that's just the stuff I like doing. And I think in terms of architecture, I think very visually in terms of structure. And that was a joy because I finally got it. But in the process.
But it's very subtle. I mean, it's not, he looks out of a window and thinks of another time when he met a man who made windows. And, we've all been, particularly with short it's like, oh, for God's sake, don't look at another object because we're going to have a flashback. I don't think I understand it. But you've definitely got that tightness that I associate with short stories that are working. Because as you say, it's like you can't just lie there and only do one thing. Sentence. You have to be doing the three things that I'm hoping for.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it is
yeah.
super, super tight and functional.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the other thing, which is really hard to make super tight and functional, I mean, you could say whatever you want to say about your relationship as Jarred to Jarred, but I mean, if you're, and writers have a huge kind of difficult time taking autobiographical material, and you can start writing a thing that's there because it happened, so you have to put it in, and you don't put it in. And you've been, not only super disciplined, but super merciless. I mean, you're throwing yourself under the bus constantly in a magnificent way.
And that's kind of the provocation in the beginning is just letting everyone know is that I have no interest in facts. I'm gonna fit the story. I'm working here. I'm making narrative, and that means bending things to shape. And the thing is I see in memoir them doing it all the time, but there's an intention towards representing reality, but it's impossible. It's impossible. You can't. I know what it takes to put that many things together, and you little nudge here, a little shape here, a little omission there, and I'm just letting them know that I am omitting. I am not interested in even though I've done this. I've done it for other reasons. This is a novel, and that's what it should be. And it's interesting. Like my agent, like after we finished and we're going to send it out, he's like, I got to ask you this question. I've been too cool to ask before this, but how much is this is true? Because I guess in the States you get an extra 0 if you have a memoir, and this is the important.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, listen, if you can get me an interview with Oprah Winfrey, I'll tell you it's all true. And if you get me 2, I'll tell you it's all a lie. So like, if we're talking that kind of money, I have a price. I'm not above that, but like, I don't think that's the price we're talking. So let's just go with what it is. It's a novel. And so like, I think it was Abraham Lincoln, as everyone said, every man has his price. And so luckily they were nowhere near mine. So I could just keep my artistic integrity and then bitch about not getting the money later.
Yeah. Poor but noble. That's what we like.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm aiming for. I'm doing good.
So somebody here is asking if we're talking about short fiction. I mean, is there anybody that you would pick out as being short fiction that you rate?
Well, I mean, I'm
other than me,
one of the kind of masters of the form. But what am I going to say? Yeah.
If we ignore me,
that's kind of freaking cruel. But then we could have said, I mean, this is why I love the form, is that it's just, that's where you can really experiment and you can really play, because in a longer form, an experiment can be tedious. And there are people who I think are now, it's really interesting. I think the formalists now are being, and I don't have another word for experimental, so I call them formalists because they're playing with the form that they're working in. And I think the generosity that I've seen compared to like the modernists, who are like, you either follow along the way that I'm doing or no. And, like Max Porter, I think, has got, and George Saunders' novel, Lincoln in the Bardo, was just again, like this generosity of like, if you are willing to come meet him halfway, you're going to have a real experience. And just the one he did with the scene in the ballroom in Lincoln in the Bardo was just something else. Like, again, like that short fiction where you're just like, God, you can do that. Of course you can do that. Because once they do it, you're like, oh yeah, you can do that. Of course, but it's some other bastard figures it out. It's not you all the time. And so short stories. I mean, lately, to be honest, like lately I haven't read it because I've been like full on dad duty, and you really need to pay attention on a short story. Novels, you can kind of read them a little easier. And that was something I learned writing one, but like, I haven't but I mean, like, it's the usual suspects. Like, I think I always think about like, how did Bartholomew do it? And, Saunders, of course, and Carrot. And, I mean, it's just, these are the guys that immediately like jump out at me as just like really, and that, they doing this a while ago, but also I look at other forms, like, the things I was doing. I was looking at Sophie Call, who's a photographer, but she does some amazing stuff with narrative, and she's not bothered about representing truth of her life, and it makes for great art. And Sophie Call was in my head more than some actual literature, and that continues, is that I'm usually more inspired by what other forms are doing in terms of performative arts or visual arts. They seem more daring, or maybe they're able to be more daring because the form of fiction, our art form is immediately a commodity, and it creates challenges to be experimental in that regard. So it's interesting.
Yeah. I do have to point out for the audience, if you're going to have children, you're not allowed to write short stories, because your children will just die. You'll be in the study and you won't notice because you're paying lots of attention. I mean, this you're doing the whole of a not especially young man's life, multiple other fully formed characters, multiple timelines, one main timeline, 305 pages. I mean, when I think of Muriel Spark and the fact that she's physically incapable of writing a long novel, it's kind of for the same reasons, that she just is tight. She just gets there, just gets that description. And you have that same description. And if you're going to put something next to a noun, it's gonna be rocking. It's not just good, it's not gonna be there, which I think is extraordinary. You were talking about photography. Now you had a sort of possible inclusion of a thread of literally using photography. I mean, was that you kind of being inspired by it and trying to drag it in, or what was happening?
I mean, I was interested in how, it was totally under the influence. I was freebasing Sebald, and I just was
don't do that either.
Yeah, just
you go blind.
Man, I was just really fascinated about how your eye moves on the page differently when there's a photo, and he knew that, and he knew how to manipulate it. And I was really interested in the relationship between the text and the images, and so it was an experiment. I wanted to do it. But it ultimately failed to work, and we pulled them all out. And it was because the photos just became documentation, and it would be impossible for anyone to read this as not memoir with these photos. And that's what was doing. I was and even though I was putting these little subtle details in which you could see that the photo wasn't representing what was happening, blah, 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 but that's not what's going to happen. People are just going to go, oh, it's a memoir, it's a memoir, it's a memoir. And I was that's not what I wanted. And again, it was Ella Wakatama, who was just are you sure? Are you sure? And I go away, wait, I know what I'm doing. I go away. I'm no, it's not working. It's not working. I got to pull it all out. And I did. And I mean, nothing is, you do fail all the time, but nothing is wasted. And so that failure has kind of furthered me in my kind of experimentation of you. And I've done it with short stories before, but now I'm very interested in how to, I'm very interested in that relationship again with photos, and how to kind of maintain the integrity of the photo with the text. And that's really hard because text is just so overbearing and so kind of totalitarian. And I don't want that. I want an image to sit next to and play equally. And it's really hard. I've once again, gone 2 years beyond my ability. So
No, any collaboration. Yeah, music, dance, you're just doing subtitles to the thing that they're doing better with their bodies because they're dancers. It's a nightmare.
Yeah, that's it. And those collaborations, I think it's just because of the nature of text. And you see these all the time. And every time I've been to a poetry read and a damn flute comes out, I'm like, oh God, here we go.
Just leave.
It's never good. It's never good. And so
and it's usually a double bass, so it's worse than a flute.
Just oh man, and I get it. We're pushing form, but you can't do it just for the sake of it. And I've been very conscious.
I can't hear your poem because of the flute. Which is not a collaboration. This is a
the
fight.
end of a stanza, it's what does that have to do with the poem? Yeah.
No, and I mean, I'm guessing, but maybe the fact that you have literally in 3D on stage with a live audience arranged chaos. You're arranging this chaos in a way that it makes absolutely perfect sense.
Yeah.
You couldn't. It's hard to describe without missing out bits of the essence of it. It's lacerating, it's heartbreaking, it makes you sweat, it makes you laugh, it makes you cry laughing, but it's perfectly organized, it's all coordinated, it's all it's all combed so that the fur is pointing in the right direction towards the dog abuser. No, that's wrong. But that's my hope, and it's just amazing to hear it. And like, people have been so generous, and it's been really nice. And like I said, like the best email was yours, just cussing me out because I knew I had done something good. When another writer who you respect just goes, "You," and like. Love. I'm Scottish. That's what love is.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. Like Irving Welsh, like he gave this kind of beautiful kind of quote for me as well. But like the real one was also kind of like, this fucking yeah. Who the fuck does he think he is? It was kind of like, I know that feeling because that's how I respond to great stuff. Oh, he did it again, and it's just it's generosity of why I found my tribe. I've always found that generosity in the arts and literature and people, well done. It's just been really nice hearing from writers who I've loved, giving me that kind of invective flecked pat on the back.
I don't even know if we're that nice. It's just when you see good stuff, it's like you're forced to be nice.
I think that's it. Is you're not nice to each other, but like you just kind of go, you're nice to the work. Like, yeah, that's that where I hate you effing. But like,
but I'm a reader. We were all readers before we were writers, and it's like, as a reader, absolutely. I am so pleased. I am so on fire. And this will stay with me, and I will give it to my mother because she is an excellent person.
Oh, that's great. My mom has asked for like a special version where I black out certain things. So she's making a list of things I'm going to black out, and that's the one she's going to let her friends read. So
all the definite articles, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Just remove that and the verbs. And then they could work on it. Now I've got a couple of questions. The audience is appreciative and having a good time as far as I can tell, but not really putting up questions. But so I will just kind of try and ask questions on behalf of everybody. If we look at the main character, I mean, that again, it's so hard. I was sitting there at 3 a.m. I think going, oh God, I don't know how you're gonna have to land this on the head of a pin to, getting somebody who sort of needs to be redeemed, and he's there, and he's nearly there, and he's better, and then he blows it, and all his life, he's like, as with the scene with the makeup, it's like you can't just look at makeup, you have to put it on your face, and it'd be weird, and she's dead, and what are you thinking, you strange little human? I mean, was he different? I'm saying he. When you stood aside from whatever Jarredness is in Jarred, was he difficult to present in a way that you could earn everything you needed to earn?
I mean, it was kind of. I just thought because it is kind of, you have to really go through this journey. So I did always have this view that I can't just like do the whole hearty descent into abysmal darkness. I needed some balance there, because that's also, there isn't, there's very rarely where it's just down, I needed something a little, that wasn't interesting to me either. And I just think, again, like I didn't want to write that kind of book. Maybe that's because the close identification. I wish, fictional Jarred as much well as myself. I don't know, but like, It was, and like again, the ending had to be redrafted and redrafted, and it ended very differently, and there was kind of a coda at the end, and like I think again, I landed it in that I hope that the reader, depending on how they're inclined, will decide what's going to happen to Jarred, because he's established the pattern. And you got to, and this is again, like, you know, in kind of addiction, is you got to decide whether this is when the pattern gets broken or not. And it's, yeah, and that's where I've left it for. And it's interesting to see like people responding now, and people are going on different sides, and people are really sure of their opinion. They really think they know better. That I knew it was going to do that. You know, yeah. And that, to me, that's the relationship between the writer and the reader, is that it is a relationship, and I'm going to give you some. You got to do some work for me, because I'm not just going to do this for you, because that is terrible writing. I don't want to read that writing. And the reader, I want the reader to be involved, and I want them to put in some work and use their imagination, and then they decide, like, what you think Jarred's going to do, you know, on the chapter that I didn't write. So
because it is massive. Yeah. No, go on.
No, I figured out how to open up a question, and there's a question I can ask if where was it?
Okay.
I just saw so just kind of discarded scenes, putting them to short stories. I just want to say, actually, it was kind of the reverse. There are things that I took out that were short stories that just didn't work. They worked because the character was similar, but they just didn't do it. And there was a short story published by Litro about the character, not at the time, not called Jarred, in a car with a Vietnam veteran having a psychotic episode. That was a short story, and I put it in there because I thought it was a really good scene, and I kind of wove it in real nice and kind of, you know, pasted down the seams and all that stuff. But ultimately I was like, nope, too much, pulled it back out, stuff like that. So there is a relationship. And because short stories were the only thing I did, the first drafts were very much of a short story writer. And I had to be a little bit more generous and repeat things which you wouldn't do in a 5,000 word short story, because I have to remind people, 3,000, 30,000 words ago and stuff like that. And so, initially it felt like a bunch of short stories, and a lot of my work was learning how to be a novelist and keeping that structure in the architecture, which was really fun. But
getting a bit of air around it.
Yeah, exactly. Getting a bit of air, exactly. And that was a real hard lesson to learn, and I had to really kind of shift my approach, and that was a really nice learning. And maybe I've ruined myself for short stories, so we'll find out.
And of that, I mean, of the photographic project, of the pieces that you've pulled out, I mean, will any of those? I mean, some of them have kind of gone elsewhere, but are you intending to repurpose them?
Yeah, so I always saw this book. So the second book, I'm thinking, will be me again looking at why did I pull these things from my scene, and like, where did this story come from? Why did I do that? And that interrogation. And it will be much more kind of self-consciously nonfiction, but it will also be full of my disrespect for genre. And so, and that's kind of what I'm working on now. And it's just tonally, it's completely different. Whereas I kind of dare you not to care about the coward. This one, it's all kind of quietness. And it's like, if you don't pay attention, you're going to miss the beauty of it. And that's maybe because I've just kind of like burnt I just really gave all that needed. And I'm in a very different space now, but that's kind of what I'm working on now. And because I'm a parent now, so like, I empathize. I'm more Jack now, and Jack, that bastard's in my head all the time giving me advice, so like, and that's what I'm interested in now, is like now, with two kids, what it's like, and just the kind of small details of life. I'm really excited. There's a scene with a fan balancer near the end, and I think that's much closer to the kind of stuff I'm writing, where it's just this quiet moment that's kind of very kind of full of the zen of the moment. Just if you pay attention to this, you'll get everything else about what's happening in this kid's psychology.
Because there are moments with you. There's that story, I think it's called A Small Good Thing, the Ray Carver story, where parents have just lost a child and they go to the baker who's infuriated and phoning them all the time because they haven't paid for the birthday cake and they don't need the birthday cake because their child's dead. And they end up going to the bakery and he's initially furious and they're furious with him for being furious. And then it all dials down and they explain, and he has nothing to say because what could you say? But he gives them freshly baked bread.
Yeah.
And it's just that thing of earning the moment of silence with things being things and the fact that they're things being good. And you're really good at that. With this book and the next book, obviously you're in here, and this kind of could drag the people attached to you into the book, or it could expose you and the people attached to you to, the press are lovely at all times. Journalists are intelligent, sensitive, delightful people. But, did you have any kind of qualms about that?
Definitely, and definitely, I was very cautious of that, and I was very conscious of that, and again, that's another reason why I wasn't interested in memoirs. I'm not interested in those stories, and how I'm navigating that in nonfiction is a whole nother thing, and it's really kind of keeping the kind of tight focus on myself, and again, I put the position, it's a novel, and I'm not interested. I have that real kind of Southern propriety about family. It's like, it's none of your damn business, And so it was ironic because this is the thing I had to write, it was this very close personal thing. And so, so I've been, it's only kind of started the kind of the media interest and stuff like that. And, I want to talk about writing. I'm a writer and I like writing. I'm not interested in me despite this. I did this for a very specific reason, and I'm happy to let's talk about that, because that's an interesting thing. Because why are we always conflating the person, underrepresented writers? Why are we always conflating them with their characters? And why can't I write about? And that's really kind of want to jab at. It's like, why do we need to know anything about the? I don't care. And when I was reading through memoir, I was like, why do people read memoir? Because I just don't care whether it's true or not. I just read story. If it's a good story, I love it. The Argonauts, right? That's a piece of memoir. I could care less if Maggie Nelson actually exists. I just that was such a great piece of writing about love and family, and and a little sprinkling of queer theory, which I knew nothing. And I loved that. I felt better I was a better person having read that. And that is all I'm looking for as a reader. And so I kind of wanted to let's get this in the conversation. And why is this? So why are we talking? Why are we constantly bringing me into it?
I don't even have all of my name. Even on the title, never mind in the book.
But that's interesting. That's I mean, we do this.
It's kind of the same thing, but different.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. We know the game, and it's how do we protect this? How do we talk about the thing that actually matters? Because that is what it matters. But we're kind of weirdly obsessed by this kind of ephemera that just does not matter, and it's not good for the people who are underrepresented, because they just keep throwing you in the box, and you climb out of the box, and they shove you back in the box, and I don't want to be in the box. I'm not interested in the box. Never was. And it's just so the kind of reduction. And who is harmed the most are the underrepresented writers, the writers who can only play the game by giving themselves and their identity, and having to kind of subscribe to an identity which just doesn't exist. I'm not the same person as I was 5 minutes ago. We just constantly changing. And isn't that the beauty? That's what's beautiful about humanity, that we aren't these little categories, and the kind of complexity of that. And so anyway, that was my hobby horse, and we're off.
No, I'm on it. It's about 2 months ago on Twitter, there was an Indigenous writer saying, yay, it's great we finally get to be included in literary festivals, but could we not be on a 3-person panel with, is there such thing as Indigenous writing? And I was thinking back to 30 years ago, always there's a 3-woman panel. Is there such thing as women's writing? And I was thinking, 3-person panel of, is there such thing as disabled writing? And it's like, yeah, you guys don't even get into the wet field full of text.
Because there's steps to the damn stage.
Yeah. It's like you don't get to be ghettoized on a 3-person panel for strange people. Yeah.
Yeah. Government policies are too busy killing us.
And yet also
I went dark again. I went dark.
While long COVID gets more of you.
No, I've thought about that, but it's also I thought about like I don't want to just. The thing about identity politics is it forces you to. It makes you think that your pain is unique, and that's not the problem. Is there's a lot of pain out there, and it's the people who have the power and don't have the power, and that's the end of the list. And we got to figure out how to kind of make it more equitable, and that will reduce the pain across the board. And to me, to kind of like keep going about we got to get more disabled writers and all that. I was like, we need a whole lot of more of everything, and there's a whole lot less of those guys. And yeah, and that's kind of my feeling about it. And I understand the importance of representation, and I hope this, me, wheeling around and talking nonsense and all this kind of thing does kind of help people go, no, this place is completely inaccessible.
Lowering you into hay on why from a helicopter.
I mean, there was one time I won a retreat on my writing. They loved my writing. You're invited for a week and and all this kind of thing. And I was like, oh, by the way, I'm in a wheelchair. Like, oh no, can't give you the retreat. So like,
yep.
20 years since the so 20 years since the law. So the excuses are wearing thin. You could put a little penny in the jar every day, and you would have had enough to put it in. But it's not just about that's my disability. We're talking about it's a whole broad range, and we really should as a society see as a mission to kind of inclusive, even if it is a pain in the butt. Yes, you're right. Yeah, getting closed captioning is a bit tricky, but you know what? Maybe it'd be great because one day, that's the thing is like one day you're going to be disabled. Like that's what age does. So it's in your interest. So, so it's in your interest. So if I can't appeal to your empathy, appeal to your self-interest. But anyways, that's me.
Yeah. Well, I've got one more question from the audience, I think, and one more question from me. This just sort of curveball one. What are your favorite movies? And there's a suggestion of 5 easy pieces, which I could absolutely understand why they would suggest that. But
I don't know if I know it. I have to look it up. But my favorite movies. Oh, I mean, it's really hard. Like I just watched Baby Teeth, and it blew me away. My wife tells me I'm no longer to pick the cultural events because that is the second time I've brought her to an event in which, the last thing I brought her to was Wild Duck by Ibsen. So there's an exercise for the audience to decide what is in common between those two pieces of art. I was just blown away. It was like, if I could see this as a movie, it was handling that again, just perfectly handling the characters, not falling for the traps, right on the edge of melodrama, but always pulling back so you get that kind of frisson of anxiety, but doesn't go for the cheap ending. And so that Baby Teeth blew me away, and I recommend it. But get ready. You think I'm rough? That is a rough movie, but beautiful. And I love that. I mean, I love those kind of films. If I'm affected, I'm happy and exciting. So, yeah.
Okay, well, last question from me before I just thank you in every possible way while internally swearing. As I said, I met you through performance events where language was in the mouth, was in the body. Your writing is really physical, There's a real awareness of physicality, which again is not that British school of writing is happening from my eyebrows up, and I am a sexless creator of flat things on pages, for which I have zero time. Now that you're reading this work, is it changing for you actually hearing it aloud? Is it confirming it? Is it making you want to do things in the future differently or more of the same or both?
Well, I mean, again, you do like edit immediately. As I've edited what was actually there versus what I said to you, and like and because I did all these live events, it just becomes automatic. I skip sections because I haven't explained that bit, or if I miss one, then I do give you a little bit of an explanation and all that. And I think it is back to that I really have I think I've done that. And it's now I'm interested in what I did, and I do see my writing now, and I do I'm like, oh, maybe did I do too much? I was like, no, that was right. That was right. That constant questioning yourself is like, oh, could I have done that? And then you think no, and actually I was annoying to Canongate because I'm like, oh, wait a minute, did I do this and this? And they're like, yeah, you did that, Jarred. Just leave me the hell alone. Can we get, we got other books to do, and they were great because it was just, again, it's that trusting yourself that you do the work. And it's really weird because it's in your head and now it's in this book and I've forgotten about it. And I've really kind of forgotten about like, oh yeah, no, the disability is quite present. Maybe I shouldn't be so prickly when people talk about disability in this book, like, oh, no, that was part of it. Yeah. Okay. All right. Calm down, Jarred. And yeah, so, I think it's okay, but yeah, I want to explore different things. I'm contrarian. I feel like I've done that. I figured that book out, and I was like, let's try different experiments and let's see what else I can do. And yeah, just just keep looking for failure.
Well, I'm gonna bet you how much could I painlessly. I'm gonna, I will absolutely bet that the thing you do next doesn't fail and is remarkable. I'll bet you 10 Scottish pounds.
10 Scottish pounds. I won't be able to use that in London. They'll be snapping that in front of my face.
Yeah, you'll only be able to spend it in Edinburgh when you're physically in the lighthouse.
I have to say, I did pick up an annoyance. I was like, it's legal tender. It's the United Kingdom. You're going to take it.
It's just pay the bearer on demand. We don't take it. Just rub it with that pen and claim that you made it yourself. Yeah. And it does now. They've changed the design. It does look massively more forged than it used to. The historical figures all look as if they're peering out of the miasma from the beyond. So that's magnificent. It's beautiful talking to you.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you for having me. Yeah.
It's exactly what I would have expected, which is passionate, truthful, humane, committed to the things that literature's actually about, that commonality of human experience, of human suffering, of the need for solidarity, the fact that we always mess it up, the messiness of life, the detail of life, the beauty of life. If you haven't already read this damn thing, why not? What's wrong with you? Have you been ill? Have you been locked down for some reason? Buy it, and buy some more for your friends. Buy it for people you don't like, because
yeah, it's heavy.
It might change. Yeah. I've only got
chuck it at them.
Yeah. Throw it at people you hate from the top of buses.
Just keep sending copies the cabinet. Let them drown in it, you bastards.
I wouldn't suggest beating Ian Duncan Smith to death with it. That didn't cross my mind.
That would be too far.
That would be too far. That would be an awful thing to do, to just find him spat.
I'd love to see the Sun headline. It would actually be worth looking at the front of the Sun just for that. But
But yeah, you know, thanks for the book. I absolutely wish it well. I hope it. I mean, I know Canongate will look after it really well.
Thank you.
And I'm glad that you found somebody who got it, so that everybody else who gets it can now get it, and that the gatekeepers actually got their acts together.
It's been brilliant chatting with you, and yeah, it's been a great time, and just thanks for everybody to joining in and letting us kind of ramble on. It's a great chat.
Yeah, thanks everybody for being there, and magnificent absolute thanks to Lighthouse. I know you've had a bit of a weird time lately, but you are a splendid book and lovely people, and take care. Definitely. Everybody, be safe out there.
See you guys. Good night.